The prison hall was silent until the door opened, and the chained inmate stepped inside, hands trembling, eyes hollow, counting the final hours of his life. Tomorrow was his execution. No family came to see him. No friends. No last requests. Except one. A request that shocked every officer who heard it. He didn't ask for food. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't ask for freedom. He asked to see his dog one last time. The only one who had ever stood by him. His retired police dog, Rex. The room fell into confusion. Why the dog? Why now? He had never spoken about his past, never defended himself, never explained the crime he was convicted of. Guards looked at each other, unsure. They thought the meeting would be simple, an emotional goodbye. But when the dog entered the room, everything changed. Instead of running to his owner, Rex began barking wildly at him, almost in panic. Officers froze where they stood. No one knew what Rex was trying to warn them about. And then, just moments later, the truth came out. A truth that shook the entire prison to its core. Stay with us, because what happened next will leave you speechless. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The prison was quieter than usual that night. Even the guards, who were used to long shifts and heavy silence, felt something different in the air. The execution chamber had been inspected, the paperwork completed, and the warden had already signed the final authorization. Everything was ready, yet the atmosphere carried a strange weight, like the building itself was holding its breath. Mark Doyle sat alone in a small interview room, his hands cuffed in front of him, his orange uniform wrinkled from hours of sitting. A single bulb buzzed weakly above his head, casting a pale circle of light around him. He wasn't crying. He wasn't angry. He wasn't begging for forgiveness. He just sat there quietly, staring at the floor as if he were trying to understand how his life had reached this moment. Most prisoners in his situation shook uncontrollably or begged the priest for one last chance at redemption. But Mark looked resigned, like a man who had already accepted a fate he couldn't escape. The guards exchanged uneasy glances every time they passed the window. Something about him didn't feel like the criminals they usually dealt with. Officer Bennett, who had escorted inmates to execution before, watched Mark carefully. "He doesn't look scared," he muttered to a colleague. "It's like he's waiting for something else." Another guard shrugged. "Maybe he's just given up." But Bennett shook his head. "No, this feels different." Inside the room, Mark finally lifted his head. The faint light caught the tired lines on his face, lines that didn't belong to a monster or a killer, but to a man who had been carrying a burden for far too long. His eyes were red, not from crying, but from days without sleep. He had refused his last meal. He had refused a visit from the chaplain. He had refused to speak to reporters. There was only one thing he had asked for, and only once. A final request, so unusual that even the warden had paused when he heard it. But that request hadn't been granted yet. It still sat on top of the warden's desk, unsigned, waiting for a decision. And Mark knew time was slipping away. His execution was scheduled for sunrise, only hours away. Still, he didn't speak. He didn't protest. He simply waited in silence, the cold reality of his situation settling deeper into his bones. Outside the room, the guards whispered about how calm he seemed. None of them realized the truth. Mark Doyle had not accepted death. He was waiting for one last chance, a chance only his police dog could give him. The warden sat in his office long after most of the staff had finished their shifts. A stack of files lay open on his desk, but his eyes kept drifting back to one thin sheet, the one containing Mark Doyle's final request. He had read it 3 times already, yet the words still felt strange every time he looked at them. Most inmates asked for a favorite meal, a chance to speak to a loved one, or a final prayer. But Mark had asked for something the warden had never heard in all his years of service. He wanted to see his police dog, Rex. At first, the warden thought it was a joke, but the officer who delivered the request confirmed that Mark was serious. He had spoken quietly, calmly, saying only, "Please let me see Rex. Just once more. No explanation. No dramatic speech. Just that one simple wish. The warden leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Allowing a retired K-9 inside a high-security facility hours before an execution wasn't standard procedure. It wasn't even in the manual. And yet something about the request wouldn't leave his mind. There was a heaviness to it, a feeling that there was more behind it than a sentimental goodbye. Officer Bennett knocked and stepped inside. "Sir, everyone's asking what you want to do about Doyle's request." The warden sighed. "And what do you think? You escorted him earlier." Bennett hesitated. "He's different, sir. I've seen men on their final nights. They cry, scream, beg for mercy. But Doyle? He's holding himself together like something bigger is weighing on him." "Guilt?" the warden asked. "Doesn't feel like guilt," Bennett replied quietly. "Feels like urgency." The warden studied him. "You think the dog matters?" "I don't know," Bennett admitted. "But I do know this. Whatever he's holding inside, he's not going to say it to us. If he talks to anyone, it'll be Rex." The warden looked back at the request form. A small signature line waited at the bottom. Empty, demanding a decision. Policy said to deny it. Logic said it wasn't worth the risk. But something deeper, something instinctual, told him this wasn't an ordinary request. And in the back of his mind, he remembered Mark's record. A decorated officer. Countless rescues. Zero history of violence. Yet here he was waiting for death. The warden finally picked up his pen. "Bring the dog in," he said quietly. He didn't know why he agreed. He only knew one thing. Whatever happened next, the prison would never forget it. The heavy gates of the state prison groaned open as the transport van rolled inside. The guards at the checkpoint barely reacted at first, until they noticed the passenger in the back. A German shepherd sat alert behind the wire partition, ears raised, eyes sharp, body tense like a soldier entering a battlefield. His presence alone changed the energy around the entrance. This was Rex, the retired K-9 officer who had once worked alongside Mark Doyle. Officer Harris, who was driving the van, glanced at his partner nervously. "He's been acting strange ever since we left the kennel," he muttered. "Like he knew we weren't going somewhere good." Rex hadn't rested once during the entire ride. He sat rigid, staring straight ahead, growling softly whenever the van slowed down near each gate. As the guards approached with clipboards, Rex suddenly stood up, muscles stiffening. His tail lowered, his posture shifting into high alert. The guard taking the signature stepped back instinctively. "Is he trained for executions or something?" he joked weakly. "No," Harris said, forcing a smile. "He's trained to detect threats." The guard swallowed hard. "So what's he detecting here?" Harris didn't answer because he didn't know. When the back doors opened, Rex didn't jump out immediately. Instead, he sniffed the air, one deep breath at a time. His nose twitched rapidly, his ears flicking toward the direction of the inner corridor, like something inside the prison had already caught his attention. Only then did he climb down from the van, paws landing firmly on the cold concrete. He wasn't scared. He wasn't confused. He was focused, far too focused for a simple visit to his former handler. As Harris attempted to guide him inside, Rex pulled against the leash, dragging the officer forward with surprising force. The dog's claws scraped against the floor as he lowered his body, ready to react. His breathing grew heavier, his steps quicker. Every guard who saw him paused. "What's wrong with the dog? Why is he acting like there's danger? I thought he'd be calm if he was seeing his old partner." But Rex wasn't acting like a dog excited for a reunion. He was acting like a dog responding to something. Something inside the prison that the humans hadn't sensed yet. As they approached the inner block, Rex suddenly growled, low, deep, and warning. His eyes locked on the hallway leading to the interview room where Mark was waiting. Officer Harris tightened his grip on the leash. "Easy, Rex, relax." But Rex didn't relax. He tugged harder, barking once, sharp, urgent, unmistakable. It was the kind of bark he only used when someone's life was in danger. And the guards felt it too. Rex hadn't just arrived at the prison. He had detected something, and it terrified him. The door to the interview room clicked open, and every officer inside turned as Rex was guided through the doorway. Mark looked up slowly, expecting to see the one creature who had never left his side during the hardest moments of his life. For a split second, a fragile hope flickered in his tired eyes. But it vanished instantly. Rex didn't run toward him. He didn't wag his tail. He didn't even pause. Instead, Rex lunged forward with a force that nearly tore the leash from Officer Harris's grip. His claws scraped violently across the floor as he dug in, teeth bared, a sharp, warning bark exploding from his chest. Mark froze. The dog, who once trusted him, was acting like he was staring at a threat. The officers reacted instantly, stepping forward, hands on tasers and batons, unsure what triggered the sudden aggression. Harris struggled to pull Rex back, but the German shepherd refused to move. He crouched low, eyes locked on Mark, not with hatred, but with intense alertness, as if he were analyzing every inch of the man sitting in front of him. Bennett whispered, stunned, This isn't a reunion. What the hell is he picking up on?" Rex growled again, deep and deliberate. Not wild. Not confused. Purposeful. Mark's chest tightened. "Rex, buddy, it's me," he whispered, voice cracking. "It's me." But Rex didn't soften. Instead, he circled to Mark's side, sniffing aggressively, nose twitching with trained precision. His body was rigid, every muscle ready to react. He kept barking, not continuously, but in sharp bursts, each one aimed directly at Mark's hands, his uniform, his shoes. Every officer in the room stiffened. No one dared move. Rex had spent years detecting explosives, drugs, weapons, bodies, and hidden threats. His alerts were never wrong. Never. Bennett took a cautious step back. "Sir, this isn't a dog attacking a man. This is a dog warning us." The warden, who had come to witness the reunion, felt a cold shiver crawl down his spine. Rex's behavior wasn't emotional. It was investigative. Something about Mark was triggering him. Something he could smell. Something no human in the room could sense. Mark lowered his head, hands trembling. "Rex, please, what are you trying to tell them?" Rex barked again, louder this time, toward the back of Mark's shirt. His tail lowered, his ears flattened, and he let out a low, vibrating growl that echoed through the room like a siren. Not hatred, not fear. A warning. The reunion everyone expected had turned into something else entirely. Rex wasn't trying to reconnect. He was trying to reveal something. Something that would change everything. The room grew colder as Rex's growls echoed off the concrete walls. Every officer stood frozen, their hands hovering near their belts, watching the retired K-9 move with deliberate precision around Mark. Dogs didn't lie. Dogs didn't pretend. And a trained police dog never reacted this strongly without a reason. Officer Bennett stepped closer to the warden and whispered, "Sir, I've seen Rex track explosives from 2 blocks away. I've seen him find evidence no human could even smell. If he's behaving like this, Doyle might not be who we think he is." The warden didn't answer. His eyes stayed locked on Rex, who was now circling Mark like he was mapping something invisible around the prisoner's body. Every few seconds, he let out a sharp bark, each one more urgent than the last. Mark's breathing grew uneven. He kept his hands still, terrified of making any sudden movement that might trigger the dog. "I swear, I'm not hiding anything," he whispered, but even he sounded unsure. Officer Harris pulled back on the leash again, but Rex planted his paws firmly, refusing to budge. His nose pressed against Mark's sleeve, then his shoulder, then paused near the back of his collar. A deep growl rumbled from his chest. The warden's face hardened. "Why is he alerting on the same spot over and over?" "No idea," Bennett murmured, eyes narrowing. "But this isn't aggression. This is detection." Another officer stepped forward, cautious but curious. Could Doyle be smuggling something? Poison? Metal? Anything that could be used during the execution process? "No," the warden replied immediately. "He's been searched multiple times. He came from solitary. He hasn't been near another inmate in months." Bennett swallowed. "Then Rex is picking up something we can't see." Mark squeezed his eyes shut. His voice shook. "Please listen to me. I asked to see Rex because he's the only one who can help me. I didn't expect this. The officers exchanged looks. No one had an explanation, yet no one could ignore the truth standing right in front of them. Rex did not trust Mark Doyle, and that alone raised a terrifying possibility. If Mark was truly guilty, Rex should have shown sadness or confusion, not this targeted alertness. If Mark was innocent, Rex should have shown affection, not suspicion. Instead, Rex's behavior fell into a third category, the reaction of a dog sensing danger. The warden took a slow step back. We need to reconsider everything. If the dog is responding like this, then something about Doyle's case or Doyle himself is wrong. Rex barked again, louder, sharper, almost explosive. And for the first time since Mark entered death row, the officers didn't just question him. They feared what they might uncover next. Years before Mark Doyle ever stepped foot inside a prison, he was one of the most respected officers in the department. His patrol car was always the first to respond, his reports were always clean, and his instincts were rarely wrong. But what made him truly exceptional wasn't his record, it was his partner, Rex. The day Mark first met him, Rex was just a young K-9 trainee, restless, energetic, and difficult for most handlers to control. But the moment Mark stepped into the training yard, Rex froze, sniffed the air, and ran straight toward him. Trainers exchanged looks of surprise as the German Shepherd sat perfectly still at Mark's feet, as if choosing him on the spot. From that day forward, the two were inseparable. They trained at dawn, ran drills late into the night, and worked real calls with a bond that felt almost telepathic. Mark didn't need hand signals most days. Rex could read the tension in his shoulders, the rhythm of his breathing, the direction of his eyes. And Mark learned to trust Rex's instincts more than any human partner he had ever worked with. They saved lives together, found missing children in storms, stopped armed suspects before backup could arrive, uncovered evidence others overlooked. Every officer in the department said the same thing. Doyle doesn't just have a K-9 partner, he has a brother. But everything changed on one terrible night. Mark and Rex were responding to a call about a dangerous suspect hiding inside an abandoned warehouse. Backup was minutes away, but a scream inside the building forced Mark to move sooner than he wanted. With Rex at his heel, he entered the dark structure, flashlight slicing through the dust-filled air. Rex stiffened immediately, growling toward a stack of crates. Mark followed the cue, just like he always did. A sudden burst of movement, a struggle, a gunshot, a figure collapsing. When the lights finally came on and officers stormed inside, the scene was chaos. Rex stood over the fallen suspect, blood on his muzzle. Mark was on the ground, disoriented, shaking, the suspect's gun lying inches from his hand. Witnesses arrived too late to see what actually happened. But someone made a decision. Someone who didn't believe Mark's version of events. Rex barked desperately at every investigator who tried to separate him from Mark that night, but they dragged him away anyway. And the bond that once defined them was severed by a case that spiraled out of control. Mark never blamed Rex for what came next, but the world did. And that night became the beginning of the end. The investigation that followed the warehouse incident moved faster than Mark ever expected. Too fast. Within hours, detectives were swarming the scene, gathering statements, snapping pictures, and marking evidence. But something felt wrong from the very beginning. No one asked Mark what happened first. No one let him speak without interruption. They looked at him not as a grieving officer, but as a suspect. According to the official report, Mark had confronted the armed suspect alone, violated protocol, and fired the fatal shot without justification. The suspect's family pushed for charges, claiming their son was unarmed and surrendering. Community groups demanded answers. The department, fearing backlash, needed someone to hold accountable. Mark became the easiest target. Even Rex's behavior, standing guard over the suspect's body, was twisted into something damaging. The dog was trying to protect the victim from him, one investigator wrote. It was a lie, but a convenient one. No one explained that Rex always guarded fallen bodies, suspect or civilian, until the scene was secure. Mark's world unraveled piece by piece. A fellow officer claimed Mark rushed inside without waiting for backup. Another said Mark had been acting off for weeks, though he couldn't explain how. Body cam footage was incomplete, the angles wrong, the warehouse too dark. Only one thing was clear: someone had tampered with the scene. But before Mark could raise the issue, he was placed on suspension. The trial was worse. Prosecutors painted him as unstable, reckless, even violent. They highlighted every small mistake from his past, twisting them into signs of a dangerous personality. They never mentioned the commendations, the rescues, or the letters from families he had saved. And the worst part? Rex was not allowed in court. His alerts, his instincts, his presence, none of it was permitted as evidence. The very partner who could have proven Mark's innocence was silenced. Mark sat through every hearing, watching his career, his reputation, and his freedom crumble. His pleas fell on deaf ears. "I was following procedure," he repeated. Rex reacted first. "I reacted to him. There was a weapon. He pointed it at us." But the jury didn't see a dedicated officer. They saw a convenient villain. In the end, Mark was convicted, not because the truth was clear, but because the truth was inconvenient. As the verdict was read, Mark didn't cry. He looked at the empty space beside him, the space where Rex should have been, and understood one thing. They hadn't just taken his freedom. They had taken the only voice that could have saved him. And now, years later, on the eve of his execution, that voice had finally returned. The room fell into a tense stillness as Rex's behavior grew more intense. His growls weren't random. They came in sharp, controlled bursts, each one aimed at a specific area around Mark. Officer Bennett felt his stomach twist. This wasn't aggression. This wasn't confusion. This was a trained alert, the kind a canine only gives when he senses something that demands immediate action. Rex's nose pressed hard against the back of Mark's collar, sniffing deeply, urgently, as if searching for a scent buried beneath layers of fabric. His breath grew rapid, his ears pinned forward. Every second he stayed locked onto the same spot made the officers more uneasy. Mark swallowed hard. "Rex, what are you smelling?" he whispered, not expecting an answer, but hoping for some sign the dog recognized him. But Rex didn't soften. He stepped back, tail low, and barked sharply at the chair Mark was sitting on. A precise, commanding bark, one that made every officer stiffen. The warden frowned. What is he alerting to? Drugs? Chemicals? Blood? "No," Bennett said quietly, shaking his head. "This is different. I've seen that bark during training. It's his hidden evidence alert." A murmur moved through the room. Hidden evidence? Officer Harris approached cautiously, watching the dog's movements. "Rex, show me," he commanded. Rex immediately pressed his snout against Mark's sleeve, then barked again and moved lower toward the waistband of his uniform. His body language was unmistakable. He had locked onto a specific scent. A scent that shouldn't have been there. Mark's eyes widened in confusion and fear. "I have nothing on me. I swear it. I've been searched every day, every time, there's nothing." But Rex wasn't reacting like a dog who smelled contraband. He was reacting like a dog who had found a clue, one no human could detect. Bennett crouched near the dog, inspecting the exact areas Rex focused on. The dog circled Mark once more, then stopped abruptly, pointing his entire body toward the back of Mark's shirt. His tail stiffened. His nose twitched. Another sharp bark. "Sir," Bennett said slowly, turning toward the warden, "I think Rex is telling us something was planted on Doyle. Something he wasn't aware of." The warden stiffened. "Planted." "Transferred," Bennett corrected. "Carried. Or accidentally exposed to him. Whatever it is, it's connected to the warehouse case." Mark felt the air leave his lungs. "You mean the night everything went wrong?" Rex barked again, louder, firmer, clearer than before. Not at Mark. At what had been done to him. For the first time since the investigation began, someone, something, was finally pointing toward the truth. And it wasn't a human. It was Rex, the one partner who had never stopped trying to save him. The room grew unbearably silent as Rex barked at the back of Mark's shirt again, his body stiff with certainty. Officer Bennett exchanged a look with the warden, one filled with unease and dawning realization. This wasn't a dog acting out of emotion. This was a dog performing the most serious alert in his training. Evidence detection. Bennett moved closer, careful not to provoke Rex. Doyle leaned forward, he instructed softly. Mark obeyed, confusion etched across his face. Harris gently lifted the collar of Mark's uniform, while Bennett inspected the fabric. Nothing unusual was visible. No stains, no residue, no signs of tampering. But Rex wouldn't stop barking, his nose pressing relentlessly against the same spot. "There's something here," Bennett murmured. "Something we can't see." The warden frowned. "What could a scent tell us that an investigation missed?" "A lot," Bennett replied. "Chemical traces, gunpowder, transfer particles, even scent signatures from objects that were never recorded." Mark's head snapped up. "Gunpowder," he whispered. "But they said the suspect didn't fire." "That's exactly the problem," Bennett said. "Rex is acting like he smells a secondary transfer, something the real shooter would have carried." Officers shifted uneasily. Secondary transfer, evidence accidentally transferred from one person to another, was rare but powerful. It could overturn cases or destroy them. Harris lifted the fabric again, this time leaning close enough to smell it himself. Nothing. No odor a human could detect. But Rex growled confidently, his nose trembling as he inhaled the faintest chemical signatures left behind years ago. "Sir," Bennett said, voice tightening, "if Rex is signaling gunshot residue or explosive powder on Doyle's collar, then he didn't fire the weapon. Someone else did. Someone close enough to brush against him." The warden stiffened. "That contradicts the entire official report. That report was incomplete," Bennett shot back. "We all knew it, but no one could prove it." Mark looked between the officers, his voice trembling. "Please listen to him. Rex was with me. He knows what happened that night. I didn't touch the suspect's weapon. I never fired mine. I tried to protect Rex. That's all." Rex barked loudly at those words, almost as if confirming them. For the first time, doubt spread through the room like a cold wind. Officers stepped back, whispering among themselves. The evidence they once trusted suddenly felt unreliable, shaky, manipulated. The warden exhaled slowly. "Get a forensic swab," he ordered. "Now, if Rex is right, Doyle may not be the killer." Rex sat beside Mark, no longer growling, only watching, determined and steady. For years, Mark's truth had been ignored. Now, because of one dog's instincts, the truth had finally begun to surface. The small evidence kit was rushed into the room, and the officers worked with attention none of them could hide. Bennett carefully swabbed the collar of Mark's uniform, while Harris steadied Rex, who watched every move with focused intensity. When the swab touched the fabric, Rex let out a low, approving rumble, as if confirming the officers were finally looking in the right place. Bennett sealed the sample and looked at the warden. "If this comes back positive for secondary gunshot residue, then Doyle didn't fire the weapon." Mark swallowed hard. The truth he had been trying to speak for years felt closer than ever, but still painfully out of reach. The warden folded his arms. "Doyle," he said quietly, "I want you to tell us exactly what happened that night. The real version. All of it." The room shifted. Even Rex stepped closer, ears forward. Mark took a shaky breath. "We entered the warehouse because we heard a scream. We didn't have time to wait." Rex sensed danger immediately. He growled and pulled toward the crates. His voice tightened. He was right. The suspect was hiding there, but he wasn't alone. Harris frowned. "There was someone else?" "Yes," Mark whispered. "Another officer. Someone we trusted." A wave of shock rippled through the room. Mark continued, voice shaking as buried memories resurfaced. "The suspect grabbed a metal bar and swung at Rex. I rushed in. The suspect stumbled backward and collided with another officer who had just entered behind us." Mark's eyes darkened. That officer panicked. He fired. The suspect went down instantly. The room froze. "Who was the officer?" Bennett asked. Mark hesitated. "I tried to report it. I told Internal Affairs. But the officer denied being anywhere near the warehouse. They said his arrival wasn't logged. His body cam was malfunctioning. And I had no proof. No one would listen. The warden's face went pale. Are you saying an officer fired the shot and let you take the blame? Mark nodded slowly. He brushed past me as he ran out. Rex growled, but we didn't know why at the time. That's when the residue got on my collar. Rex barked sharply, confirming the memory with a forceful certainty. Bennett clenched his fists. The real shooter framed him. Someone with the authority to cover his tracks. The warden exhaled shakily. If this is true, Doyle, you didn't kill anyone. You were set up. Rex stepped forward, placing himself between Mark and the officers, as if demanding they finally see what he had known all along. The truth wasn't complicated. It had just been ignored. And now, at last, Rex had dragged it out of the shadows. The moment Mark finished speaking, the room shifted from tense curiosity to pure urgency. The warden didn't sit. He didn't breathe. He simply stared at Mark, then at Rex, realizing the unimaginable truth. They might be hours away from executing an innocent man. We need those test results, the warden ordered sharply. Now. Not tomorrow. Not later. Now. Bennett rushed out with the sealed swab, practically sprinting down the corridor toward the forensic unit. Officers exchanged looks that held more fear than anger. None of them wanted to admit it out loud, but the truth was clear. If they didn't act fast, they would be responsible for killing a man who had already lost everything. Mark sat still, his cuffed hands trembling. Does this mean I have a chance? The warden didn't turn toward him. His voice was low, controlled, but the weight behind it was unmistakable. It means if Rex is right, we have to stop your execution before sunrise. Everyone knew what that meant. They had only hours. Outside the interview room, Rex paced back and forth, nails clicking sharply against the tile floor. Every few seconds he let out a short, urgent whine, as if he knew time was slipping away. He wasn't acting like a dog who found evidence. He was acting like a dog who knew a life depended on every passing minute. Officer Harris crouched beside him. Easy, boy. We're working on it. But Rex didn't calm down. He scratched at the door again, barking once, a powerful bark that echoed down the hall, demanding speed, demanding action. Inside, the warden was already on the phone. Get me the Attorney General's office, he snapped. I don't care what time it is. He waited, jaw clenched, fingers tapping on the desk. Yes, this is urgent. Death penalty case. New evidence. Immediate review. Mark watched with wide eyes. For the first time in years, he didn't feel invisible. Minutes passed like hours. Bennett returned, breathless. Sir, forensic team is running the test now. They said they'll expedite. We should have an answer soon. How soon? The warden demanded. 40 minutes, maybe less. Rex barked again, scraping at the floor, pulling toward the execution wing like he sensed danger looming. Mark's heart hammered. If the results come too late? The warden finally met his eyes. They won't. But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Everyone felt it. The clock was moving faster than justice. If they didn't uncover the truth in time, the execution would proceed. And Rex wasn't barking at the past anymore. He was barking at the future. A future they had to change before sunrise. The interview room felt tighter as the minutes dragged on. Outside, Rex paced in sharp, restless circles, his nails clicking rapidly against the tile floor. Every officer who passed him stepped aside instinctively. He wasn't just alert. He was on edge in a way none of them had ever seen before. Mark watched him through the small window. He's scared, he whispered. Not for himself, for me. The warden stepped forward, rubbing his forehead. We're doing everything we can. The test results. He stopped mid-sentence. Rex had frozen. His body stiffened, muscles tightening from neck to tail. His ears snapped upward, and a deep growl formed in his chest, not toward Mark this time, but toward the hallway behind the officers. Bennett glanced back. What's he reacting to now? Before anyone could move, Rex lunged forward, barking furiously, louder than before, louder than at Mark, louder than at anything earlier. His entire body pointed like an arrow toward a man walking calmly down the corridor. Officer Grayson, one of the senior officers, one who had testified against Mark during the trial. Grayson looked startled for only a second, just one fraction of hesitation, but that was enough for everyone to see something was wrong. Rex's bark escalated into a frantic roar. He pulled so hard that Harris nearly lost his grip. The dog's eyes were fixed, unblinking, filled with a kind of certainty that sent a chill through every person standing there. Bennett narrowed his eyes. Grayson, step forward. Grayson stiffened. What's this about? Rex barked again, sharp, piercing, desperate. Harris whispered, he's not reacting to Doyle anymore. He's reacting to him. Grayson shifted uncomfortably. Control your dog. He's unstable. No, Bennett said firmly. He's alerting. The warden's voice dropped. Grayson, were you at the warehouse the night of the shooting? Grayson hesitated, only a heartbeat, but that silence felt heavier than a confession. I already told Internal Affairs. Rex exploded with another bark, lunging so violently that his leash jerked from Harris's hand. The German shepherd rushed forward, stopping inches from Grayson's boots, snarling with such intensity that every guard drew back. Bennett stepped between them. Why is he alerting on you? Grayson's face went pale. The warden's eyes widened as realization struck. You were there. You were the one who fired. Grayson's jaw clenched, and for the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. Rex didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't move. He stood tall, resolute, unwavering, not accusing a man, but revealing the real threat inside the prison. And suddenly, everyone understood. Mark wasn't just innocent. The real culprit had been walking free, right inside their walls. The hallway erupted into chaos as Rex's growl deepened, echoing like a warning siren through the prison wing. Officers froze, torn between stepping back and stepping forward. But Rex didn't wait for anyone. He moved with purpose, blocking Officer Grayson's path, teeth bared, body rigid with unmistakable certainty. Grayson lifted his hands defensively. Call off the dog. He's out of control. He's not out of control, Bennett snapped. He's identifying a threat. Grayson's jaw tightened. Sweat formed on his brow despite the cool air. This is ridiculous. I've done nothing wrong. But Rex barked again, short, explosive, and dead on. He sniffed at Grayson's boots, then his pant leg, and then froze at the hem of his shirt. A deep growl rattled from his throat, vibrating through the floor. Harris swallowed hard. He's giving the same alert he gave on Doyle. The warden stepped closer, voice icy. Grayson, tell us the truth. Were you at the warehouse that night? Grayson's eyes darted left, then right, calculating, cornered. Rex pressed forward, nose inches from his leg, sniffing aggressively. Suddenly, Rex let out a final, decisive bark, the kind he used when identifying a suspect beyond any doubt. Bennett's voice dropped. He smells the same residue, the same scent signature, the same transfer. Grayson snapped. This is insane. Dogs don't decide cases. No, the warden said coldly. But dogs don't lie. Rex lunged, not to bite, but to shove his body against Grayson's leg, locking onto the exact spot where chemical traces lingered. The force knocked Grayson off balance, and he stumbled backward. His hand flew instinctively to his waistband. Every officer reacted instantly. Don't move. Hands where we can see them. Drop it. In one swift motion, Grayson pulled out a small metallic object, a burner phone. Harris grabbed his wrist, slamming it against the wall while Bennett restrained him. The phone clattered to the ground, screen lighting up to reveal a string of messages. Bennett picked it up, eyes widening. These are about the warehouse case instructions cover-ups. Someone told him exactly what to say in court. The warden's face darkened. So you framed Doyle to protect yourself. Grayson broke, his shoulders sagging, eyes hollow. He wasn't supposed to be blamed, but once the department pushed it, letting him take the fall was easier. Rex snarled, stepping forward, as if disgusted. Mark watched through the window, breath trembling. For years, he had prayed for the truth to surface, but he never imagined it would happen like this. With one dog, one moment, one undeniable confrontation. The real shooter was finally exposed. And Rex had delivered the justice no one else would. The moment Grayson was dragged away in handcuffs, the atmosphere inside the prison shifted. The tension that had weighed on every officer's shoulders began to crack, replaced by a sharp, urgent energy. Bennett clutched the burner phone as if it were the final missing piece of a puzzle that had haunted the department for years. The warden didn't waste a second. "Get forensics to analyze that phone immediately," he ordered. "Every message, every call, every deleted file, everything." Rex stood tall beside Mark's door, tail lowered, breath steady. He wasn't barking anymore. He wasn't growling. He was simply watching, calm, confident, as if he already knew the truth was finally out in the open. Minutes later, an officer rushed in with the forensic report in hand. "Sir, the swab from Doyle's collar tested positive for secondary gunshot residue. The exact same compound found on Officer Grayson's uniform." The warden closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of the revelation settle. Then he turned toward the attorney on the phone. "We have proof. Doyle didn't fire the weapon. He was framed. Halt the execution immediately." Every guard in the room froze. It was done. After years of silence, years of pain, years of being ignored, Mark finally had someone who believed him. The warden walked to the interview room and opened the door himself. Mark looked up, confusion mixed with fear in his eyes. His hands were still cuffed, shoulders tense, expecting another blow, another denial, another step toward death. Instead, the warden spoke softly. "Mark, the execution is canceled." Mark's breath caught. What? "You're not going to die today," the warden said, his voice steady. "We have new evidence. Strong evidence. Evidence that proves you weren't the shooter." Mark leaned back, stunned. For years, he had imagined this moment, prayed for it, begged for it. And now it was happening. He looked at Rex through the open door, and his eyes filled with tears. Rex walked in slowly, head lowered. Then, for the first time since entering the prison, he approached Mark without tension. He pressed his head gently against Mark's knee. Mark broke. He lowered his head, tears falling onto Rex's fur. "You came for me. You really came for me." Rex let out a soft whine, one of relief, of victory, of loyalty unbroken. The officers stood silently, humbled. For a long time, the justice system had failed Mark Doyle. But Rex hadn't. And now the truth was finally louder than the lies. The sun had just begun to rise when the final paperwork was completed. The long night, the night that should have ended Mark Doyle's life, had instead rewritten it completely. Officers gathered in the hallway outside the warden's office, whispering in disbelief. A man they had nearly watched walk to his execution was now being escorted toward freedom. Mark stepped out slowly, blinking against the morning light he hadn't seen without bars in years. His clothes had been changed, his hands finally free of cuffs. He looked different, no longer defeated, no longer hollow. There was hope in his eyes, fragile but real. And standing at the bottom of the steps was Rex. The German shepherd lifted his head the moment he saw Mark. No barking, no growling, just a deep, emotional quiet. Mark approached him carefully, almost afraid this moment would vanish like a dream. But Rex walked forward on his own, closing the distance with slow, confident steps, and rested his head gently against Mark's chest. It was a reunion years overdue. Mark dropped to his knees, wrapping his arms around Rex's neck. Tears slipped silently down his face. "You saved my life," he whispered. "You never gave up on me." Rex let out a soft whine, leaning into the embrace as if he, too, had been waiting for this moment since the night everything went wrong. Nearby, Bennett cleared his throat. "Sir, there's something you should know." He nodded toward the warden, who stepped forward with a small folder. "Given the new evidence," the warden said, "your record will be cleared. You will be fully exonerated." Mark looked up, overwhelmed. "After everything you're clearing my name?" "You deserve nothing less," the warden replied. Rex barked once, sharp and joyful, almost celebratory, drawing smiles from the officers who had gathered to witness the moment. Even those who once doubted Mark now felt pride, guilt, and respect mixing inside them. As Mark rose to his feet, Rex stayed by his side, tail softly wagging. Bennett approached with a small smile. He's retired, you know. No active duty left for him. Mark placed a hand on Rex's back. Good. He's coming home with me. It wasn't a question. It was a promise. The officers stepped aside, forming a quiet corridor as Mark and Rex walked toward the exit, toward freedom, toward a life stolen and finally restored. The heavy prison doors opened, and sunlight poured in, bathing both man and dog in warm light. For the first time in years, Mark breathed freely. He had walked into the prison as a condemned man. He was walking out as a cleared man, because one loyal K9 refused to let the truth die. And together, they stepped into a new beginning. This story teaches us that truth cannot be buried forever. Even when the world turns against someone, integrity, loyalty, and patience can bring justice back to light. Mark's life reminds us that a single mistake, lie, or rushed judgment can destroy an innocent person's future. But Rex shows the power of loyalty and instinct, how standing up for what is right can save a life. The moral is simple. Always seek the full truth before making decisions. Never judge without evidence. And value those who stay loyal even when everyone else walks away. Real justice demands courage and honesty.